and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. So like and subscribe and check us out.
Lights are bright on Friday night, fall in small Texas town. People train
Well, the
like
lights will be a
malls.
little bit less bright this week as so many teams across the state are taking their bye weeks, but we've still got some great football to talk about. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Central Texas Football Podcast, brought to you by Ranch Masters, right out there in Lake Whitney, Texas. We bring on Mr. Kenny Hayes to talk a little Central Texas football. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, buddy. How about you?
I'm doing better this week. We're at the proverbial halfway spot of the football, or at least the football regular season. For the regular size districts, most of them will be starting district play next week. Of course, you've got like 7-2A Division I, who we'll be talking about here in a minute. You know, they've already started their district play, but we always joke on sideline to sideline how fast this goes. But man, this season is flying by to already be at the halfway point.
Yeah, it is. And you kind of look back where we started, and I was thinking about teams that kind of surprised me, or teams that you thought didn't really thought may be good, but really some pleasant surprises. I really think about 3A D1 Region 2 with Tatum and Jefferson kind of breaking that top 10 now, and really makes me wonder if they've got something for Malakoff. You know, Malakoff has played well, no reason to doubt him, but several questions like that throughout the region, or the Central Texas region. And you look at Franklin with the way Columbus is just pouring it on everybody they play. So got some good matchups coming up in district and in the playoffs.
Well, I've seen Jefferson. I've seen Columbus. Columbus is the real deal. Saw them last week against Belleville. Man, the only question you have for Columbus is how physically wore down are they after that Belleville game, because that was a slobber knocker. I like Jefferson. I like Cameron Williams at running back. They have a really solid quarterback. They have a really decent sized offensive line, but man, at least in that region, until proven otherwise, Malakoff's head and shoulders above everybody. I think we're all realizing it's going to be Malakoff versus Franklin / Columbus / Hitchcock winner. And don't count out Hitchcock down in that region. The way they beat Belleville the week before, I mean, they actually held Belleville to less points and had better success against their offense than Columbus. Now, in saying that, Belleville and Columbus, they haven't played against each other in like 10 years, but that used to be a pretty big rivalry. And it felt like that at the game. It felt like a playoff game, like a rival, all that. So, we're getting into that point where we can finally start kind of peeking ahead and starting to talk about the playoff scenarios and the region favorites. But before we do that, we still got district play starting up. And then, of course, like we said, like for 7-2A Division I, they're already in district play. Heck, teams will start almost being eliminated after this next week of football.
Yeah, and looking back, last week, we got more review games this week than we do have preview games because, like you said, there's just not a whole lot. I think more than a third of the teams are off, or some. I saw a stat, something similar to that, off this week. If you look at Alvarado, Glen Rose last week, Glen Rose, of course, getting upset 2 weeks ago by Robinson. I've been on Twitter and I've looked at all these Player of the Week awards, and I don't know how if you're a 4A award or a statewide award, I don't know how you don't give an award to Cardia Collier. Man, what a hell of a game he had last week.
Yeah, 10 touchdowns. He threw for 200, or ran for 200 and threw for 300, or flipped it. The only thing that I would say has been a little bit of a negative in his game is he has turned the ball over with interceptions. And it's really weird, though, because usually when you get a quarterback that has thrown a couple interceptions a game through the beginning of the season, their completion percentage will also be down. His isn't. He's very efficient. I think he was 16 of 22 last week with the 3 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. So out of 16 completions, 5 of them were either scores or flipping the field. But other than that, he has been absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if that game takes the shine off of the Robinson upset a little bit. Obviously, I know Canyon Evans has been hurt for Glen Rose, but he's the quarterback. And by the way, they ran for like almost 500 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, Glen Rose ran for almost 500 yards in a 20-point loss. So I know you can point to Canyon Evans being hurt, and he's supposed to be back, but something has happened to this Glen Rose defense, and I don't know, if it's injuries, if it's what, because Glen Rose is never going to be known for, they're not a Carthage defense, but I mean they had started out the year against 3 really good teams. They held Grandview to 14, Gatesville to 12, and Brownwood to 16, and now that one didn't look that impressive until last week with what Brownwood did to China Spring. But then all of a sudden, Glen Rose gives up 42 to Robinson, and now 71 to Alvarado. They're going to start district play with a Godly team that's feeling really good about themselves. And they beat Mineral Wells this past week. And Godly, they've got a really good quarterback, and I think Wyatt Burke's his name. And I don't know if they can beat Glen Rose, because I still think Glen Rose can score a ton of points on them. But I do think Glen Rose, one of the early favorites in Region 2, in Region 1, 4A Division 2. Now it's like we don't really know what they're going to be.
Yeah, and you can rush for 500 yards and score 50 points, but if you give up 52, like you said, if your defense just can't stop anybody, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, I agree with you in that district. Kind of impressed with Godly with that win last week with Benbrook, who's undefeated and has a decent win underneath their belt. 2 of them actually, Holiday and Whitney. So yeah, I think that'll be a good little battle in that district. What do you think about Troy and Maypearl? I don't think either of those teams are going to win state, or probably 2 rounds, 3 rounds at best. But I like that kind of inter-regional little matchup, trying to see who's who, and Troy pulls that off by 7. Jaden Lucky, like we talked about at Troy, they don't have to throw the ball 50 times a game and McMurtry go for 300. He had another good game, 128 yards and a touchdown. And Troy was down early, 14-0, and came back and tied it up at half and eventually won it. I don't think Troy's going to challenge Franklin, but I think they're going to get that second spot, and maybe Rockdale, Little River, and man, I don't know about Cameron Yo. I don't know if they're going to challenge for a playoff spot or not.
Well, 11 3A Division 1 went from being, they were, I think, the 3rd toughest district in our toughest district show to being really a dud. And I'm not even talking about Franklin. Their 2 losses are perfectly fine. Salina and Legacy, they don't even count. But with Yo starting 0-5, with Little River Academy starting 0-5. Now, to be fair, Little River Academy plays one heck of a non-district schedule. But the problem is they've started becoming less and less competitive. Like when you look at where they were when they lost to Conley 46-22, you're like, okay, that's fine. That's a 4A Conley team who has talent. Then they lose to Lexington 45-21. You're like, that's okay, man. Lexington might be the best 3A Division 2 team. They are in that region and possibly that's, that whole area. But then, getting beat by Salado 67-39, giving up 76 last week to Whitney. I think it's fair to say that LRA is struggling this year way more than I thought they would. But then McGregor and Yo are 0-5. Rockdale's 3-2, but it's kind of like it's an okay 3-2. So you've got Troy sitting there 5-0. And no, I don't think that they're competitive with Franklin in any stretch, but I think they're second place, and you get in a second place path, you've got a good chance to make a few rounds. And that's all Troy really needs to do right now. They just need to build off of, what was it? 2019, they were 12-12, and since then, or 12-2. And since then they've kind of tanked and struggled. You just need to build off that and get a couple playoff wins, and then go into next year and you keep building. For Maypearl, hey man, that's a good loss. They've had 2 really good losses. They lost to Troy in a competitive game, and they lost to Mart, 36-34. I do think Maypearl has the chance if they take care of business in district, and they're in a district where, who do you think the favorites are? Because I don't know, Grandview's Grandview, but Groesbeck, Maypearl, and Whitney all sitting there either 4-1 or 3-2, and they've all played really solid schedules. Mahia's got a couple good wins, and then West is just West, man. They just kind of just chugging along. I think this district is wide open. I don't think there's a prohibitive favorite.
Yeah, and I think for the first couple of weeks of district, we're probably going to have most of those games on our preview anyway, because I don't think you're really going to get a clear picture of anything until week 8, 9, if then, maybe week 10. People may be playing for playoff spots then, and I just don't. I'm with you. I don't see a favorite. Yeah, Whitney and Groesbeck have pretty impressive resumes, but Whitney tried to schedule a tough pre-district schedule, but Rogers is down. Little River Academy's down. Benbrook beat them, which turned out to be, like we talked about, a decent team. They beat Mart, but Maypro lost to Mart in overtime. Going for 2. So I think they're all, as far as I just don't see a favorite right now, and I think every week's going to be we're going to be watching those games pretty closely.
Yeah, and you talk about Mart, and they're kind of starting to show how Mart is. I know they only won 28-22 against Bremond only and against Bremond, but that was like 22-6 at one point.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
20 to
And
nothing
you're
in the first quarter. Mart
Yeah,
was
that's
up.
what it was. And you're starting to see, and give credit to Bremond for digging back in and making a game of it. But still, talking about a district that everybody pointed to, including us. This is your toughest district in 2A Division 2. This is your toughest district. I mean, again, it's still tough, and these are still solid teams. And a lot of its toughness is just how deep and how big this district is. I mean, they're already all about to be starting on, week 2 of their district schedule. But Bremond's 2-2, Chilton's 1-3, Goldwave's 2-2. They've been okay. Wortham's 3-1, but they haven't really played the toughest schedule. So far, the 10-2A Division 2 is kind of been a letdown. Now that doesn't mean once the district's 3 weeks in, we're also going to be feeling the same way. But I thought at the beginning of the year that somebody might actually beat Mart in district, even if Mart won district. I'm not seeing it now. I think Mart's about to run the table, and I think Mart's about to really start ramping up.
Yeah, and I agree. We thought that was going to be a tough district. You knew that Chilton lost quite a bit, but you thought they had enough coming back to be competitive. And you look at Bremond, they got Tank Scott at running back. They got a freshman, the coach's son, at quarterback. So they've got some nice pieces, but they're kind of young. And I saw Coach Hoffman said, they kind of cursed themselves because everybody expects them to beat a 2A team, by 50 points. It's not always going to be that way.
Yeah.
And we're really used to seeing that in district. In the playoffs, when you get to the 3rd or 4th round, you tend to see closer games with Mart. But they still got Mart ranked number 1. Bremond, I don't know where they went to this week, but I think it's a tough district. But I think with Chilton and like you said, Wortham, they're just not what we thought they were going to be. And Chilton did lose the Red brothers, and they were phenomenal football players. I still like Mart. I want to see them playoff time. If they stay healthy, I think they can make a run. I don't know that they're the best team in 2A, D2, but I think they're right up there.
No, I mean, again, it's Mart. You kind of at least expect them to at least get through the region. I mean, you kind of get used to them losing in the semifinals of the state championship game. So tell me a little bit about this, Hillsboro. I didn't get to be on the show last week. I had some issues, basically ended up having to take a whole week off, but Hillsboro, I think, surprisingly beat West 12-10. And then last week, I think West bounced back really nicely, beating a solid Marlin team 21-7. It's hard to get a gauge on West this year.
Yeah, I think, Coach Woodard, man, he does a really good job over there. And I used to say this about Craig Horn, and I'll say it and there's no knock on West, but Woodard will do more with less. You may look at this pre-district and say, man, that team doesn't look good, but they just get better and better. They've got a sophomore quarterback in Dub Crane, whose older brother was a quarterback last year. They've got Coy Klish, who's a really good running back. He's a state, qualifier in the 100, so he's got a lot of speed. I think he had a pick 6 last week or the week before that. They're going to be solid. They may be I think last year they were 1 and done, and that may be that type of team depending on their seeding. They're always going to be tough. They're going to be big up front. I think they're young up front offensive line. They've got a good defensive line with Clander, who's a several-year starter back on the defensive line. Marlin's good. Marlins had a really tough pre-district schedule with Honey
Yeah.
Grove and West. Roderick Suiters is their quarterback. He's played. I think this is his third year to start. He can spin the ball a little bit. Yeah, I think West, they played at Waco renovations at their place, so it's kind of a neutral site game. West is going to be solid. I don't know that they're going to be an underdog in any district game. I think they're all going to be pick'ems a lot, like we talked about. So I think they'll get better as long as they stay healthy. They'll get better as the year goes on.
Well, and in West, I think over the last couple of years they've started throwing the ball a little more. I mean, by that they might throw it 12 times a game instead of 6 times a
Yeah.
game. But yeah, again, we talked a little bit about it, but yeah, 5-3 Division One, it's going to be a blast, and I kind of like. I'm really liking these districts that just all set their buys. Let's just all take the buy at the halfway point. Luckily, with the coaches shows that I'm doing, a lot of them are doing that, and every coach that's doing this, and a couple of them, this is the first year that they've had it like this. They're like, this is awesome. Like, we don't have to go scouting Friday. Not only do the players get a rest, but we can kind of take a moment. A couple of them are taking the wives out to dinner. Some of them are going to go watch other, like, volleyball and stuff. But I really think if there was any way we could ever get uniform districts across the state of Texas, I think it would be so awesome. And I feel this way with the NFL. I wish the NFL would just take one bye week all at the same time. Yeah, we would miss the game, but that's kind of the point. That I think this leads to next week. You're going to have so much excitement in these districts that complete buys, and then boom, the next time we see them, they're playing district matchups, games that matter. I just think it leads to better anticipation.
Yeah, because I've already looked forward to not this week, but next week, and just all the different games you're going to have. And man, there's going to be some great ones, and we'll probably absolutely spend more time previewing than we will reviewing because there's just not a whole lot.
All right. So we didn't get to talk about it. I really wanted to. In fact, I wanted to try to get the coach on, but again, issues. But I kind of want to take 1 week back. And I know, again, that we talked about Glen Rose getting beat by Alvarado pretty bad, but still rewind a week. And Robinson pulled off what is considered, I still consider it one of the bigger upsets in 4A in the beginning of the 2024 season. I think, though, last week was just as impressive because it would have been so easy to kind of relax after that and be like, hey, we got our big win. We're awesome. But did they then come out and beat a Hillsboro team, as we just talked about, that kind of, I think, slightly upset West? I almost think that the Rockets win against Hillsboro was just as good as the Glen Rose win.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at that, the Glen Rose game, the Marino, the running back that just went off. I mean, he went for like 300 and something, or I think it's 400 total yards. He was a backup. Their starter got hurt, and he just gets put in there and just goes off. And I had heard during the scrimmage season that some teams that scrimmage Robinson, like, they got a really good running game. You probably didn't see it. The West game, they beat West in a double overtime, I think. And so, this kind of, it's hard to judge these teams against certain teams because, Hillsboro beat West, Robinson beat West, and then they play each other. And Hillsboro's a good, they got a lot of speed. They play really good defense. But Robinson, Coach Lancaster just does a really good job. He got his guys prepared to play. And like you said, the win is pretty impressive in itself because there was no letdown. The guys they didn't peak. They weren't satisfied with just beating Glen Rose. So yeah, Coach Lancaster, and we talked about last week. Last year we talked about if you're going to build a program, what coach, area coach, not statewide, and Lancaster was one of them because he's been really successful wherever he went. OC at Troy, head coach at Little River, kind of got them turned around. Now at Robinson, he's doing the same thing.
All right, I want to kind of do a review that we will then melt into a preview because Stephenville last week took on La Vega and ended up outlasting them. I think a game that I was a little surprised it was close. La Vega's great, but the La Vega's issue is they're trying to figure out their quarterback. Their stud quarterback, I can't think of the kid's name. I think it was Jablaney Thornton last year.
Jabari, yeah, he graduated.
Yeah, he graduated. They still have Bryson Rowland, who is one heck of a running back. And they still got a defense, but they haven't been La Vega-like defensively for the last couple of years, and including this year. They've given up 49 to Salina. They gave up 35 to West Orange Stark, which was a little surprising because West Orange Stark, even when they're at their best, aren't really an offensive juggernaut. And then they shut out Brownwood, which you go, okay, that was Brownwood. But then Brownwood last week, I kind of felt like they might have revitalized their season by not only beating China Spring, but putting some points on the board. But then La Vega, they give Stephenville fits. Stephenville jumped out early and then kind of used Wilkerson and kind of grinded down La Vega. It's still weird to say that you can grind down a La Vega defense, but I think this was a really good win for Stephenville. And I think this game reminds everybody that, La Vega might be going into district play at 2-3, but when you look inside 12-4A Division II, I mean, I still look at them as the prohibitive favorite with Robinson. China Spring has, played a really tough schedule, but they've lost 3 of those games, and they haven't been. They were competitive in the second half of the Springtown game, but the Brownwood game, they let that game get away from them. I still think they have the talent, but man, 12-4A Division II is just going to be really, really interesting after this week. And when they actually start with Lorena Lampasas, I guess we could talk about that one before we get to the Stephenville game. I'm curious about this Lorena Lampasas game. They're the only team playing this week. Lampasas is known for their offense. They have a really good quarterback. They're really athletic. Lorena on the year, they're 1-3, but again, who have they played and who have they lost to, losing to Malakoff and losing to Franklin before beating Yo. But I was a little concerned that they didn't dominate Yo. Yo's bad this year. Yo's 0-5, and Lorena only beat them 26-13. A little surprised by that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's due to injury or what, but they swapped quarterbacks. Blanchett came in at quarterback against Yo and played well, threw up some nice stats. And the Corrales kid, of course, he's a playmaker and he did his thing. And going back and real quick to District 12 D2 4A D2, I feel bad for not thinking Robinson's going to win that district since they are state ranked. But I don't know that if I had to bet one way or the other, I don't know that I would bet for them. They're the favorite over La Vega or Conley right now, because of just how athletic both those teams are. And of course, Conley got beat by Athens last week.
But that was shocking.
Well, I think Conley was up early, and then Athens came. I watched a little bit of it on my phone, and I thought, well, I think Conley's going to, I kind of just snoozed it and went on and looked at other stuff, and then I come back and look at the final, and Athens won that game. That's just Conley's MO, man. I mean, they just sometimes they snooze, and they a lot of times it happens in the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Grant and I've been talking about that for 15 years now. And to be fair, Athens is 4-1, and I think their only loss was to Henderson. And Clay Baker, who was at Price Carlisle, he's from Henderson, and this is year 2 that he's there, and he's kind of turning Henderson around. So that's not a bad loss. They beat Kaufman and Palestine and Jacksonville. None of them are great teams, but for Athens, those are impressive wins. But Conley, I was just a little bit surprised with that. And you could also get, like you said, they get out ahead and they kind of put it in neutral. Or you also get, hey, we're about to hit district. We don't, we're going to throttle back on some of our stuff. But you go back to you talking about Robinson being state ranked. And this is, I want anybody that I'm about to say this to please understand, this is not a knock on Robinson, but this is one of those issues with how the rankings work now with divisions and things like that. Look, Robinson is a very solid Division II team in 4A. Yeah. Robinson has a chance to play a few rounds in the playoffs. Robinson in no way is the 6th best team in 4A. I'm sorry. I'm just being 100% honest. And this is why, like, sideline to sideline, we break out our rankings this week. Actually, as we were starting to get this ready, Grant sent me his draft of the rankings. We send each other our rankings without talking, and then we kind of whittle it from there. And he didn't have Robinson in the top 10. I don't have Robinson in the top 10. I don't have Robinson anywhere close. And it's not a knock on Robinson. It's just there's other teams that are playing better opponents who have more losses. So by ranking logic, they get dropped, fair or not. Now, I will say this. Step and them do a really good job of looking at who plays who and who beats who. And so, like when Kilgore and Carthage played and Carthage got beat by Kilgore, Carthage didn't drop. They shouldn't. But there are, after 2 or 3 losses, even if they're good losses, you have to go, okay, Robinson beat a good Glen Rose team, or at least we thought a good Glen Rose team.
Mhm.
So we've got to rank them up. And then when a lot of crap happens above them, Robinson's sitting there at 6. And I know it's fun, but I also feel that the expectations get outsized at that point.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I just don't know that I'd put money on Robinson winning that district. I think I would probably pick Conley or La Vega ahead of them. And then Lorena may figure it out. Gatesville, they've got a really good running back. They're not too. I mean, I think it's going to be kind of a shootout for those 4th playoff spots.
And again, Lorena is still sitting there, and their losses are really again, they were a team that you can't rank above Robinson right now, but I would put their resume up even at 1 and 3 if it wasn't for, again, that Cameron Yo game being kind of I don't know. That was just a weird one. And Lorena's also beat up. But, that's the one bad thing. Nobody talks about that when you're playing tough teams. But when you're playing a Malakoff and a Franklin back to back, even if you're the 4A team of the group, and let's be fair, Lorena barely is in 4A, and this is their first time back in 4A in 2 recruiting two realignment cycles. But you're still going to be fit. You're going to be sore after Malakoff and Franklin back to back. So maybe, with Yo, like you said, maybe they rested some guys. But I wanted to go, speaking of playing teams above you, Grant and I Saturday are going to go check out Stephenville as they take on Ruston out of Louisiana. Now, Ruston is the defending state champ in their class. They basically would be 6A if they were in, a high 5A Division I if they were in Texas. Ruston is I grew up in East Texas. I grew up with Louisiana news stations as much as, Texas news stations. And so I know what Ruston is as a program. Now, this was their first state title in 30 years, but they had multiple state semifinals and state championship losses, and they won, I think, 4 or 5 state championships in the 80s. But yeah, this is going to be one of those weird games where Stephenville might be a 2-touchdown underdog. And I am curious to see. It's not about if they win or not. I'm just curious to see how they play them after Ruston beat Longview 21-10 and then absolutely waylaid Midland Legacy. And I know the Rebels are not as good as they had, but still to go into Midland and beat them as bad as they did. It's just, I'm curious to see what Stephenville looks like as the underdog.
Well, when you sent that game over to preview it, I pulled up Ruston, and I was surprised. I didn't know that they'd already played Longview and Midland Legacy in Texas. So, hey, kudos to them for scheduling some tough Texas teams. Like you said, Midland Legacy is probably not who they have been in the past. But Stephenville's got some firepower with Gafford and Gentry, and Wilkerson's really, taking over for where Tate Maruska left off. He's really good running back. I watched some of his highlights this week, and man, he's got some speed. He was running away from some dudes, some related kids.
I think that's the one thing he has over Tate. And it's not that Tate couldn't get separation once he got to the second level, but Tate was more of your 5'8", 10, and Wilkerson's more of your 5'6" and 35 and 5'6" and 62. And I do think at times last year, especially when they had the quarterback injuries, and we were there at the Brownwood game when they lost both their starting quarterback and their backup quarterback. And I remember Grant, whenever the guy third string came in and he's like number 42 or something, he said this is either going to go really good or really bad for him. And they hung on and beat a really good Brownwood team. But going forward, they got bogged down in that offense because they didn't have that home run hitter. I think Wilkerson is that home run hitter. He had 200 yards last week against La Vega. I know he had a 40-something yarder touchdown and a 60-something yarder. But yeah, the problem is one of the few times you'll ever say this about Stephenville is they're going to be out depth. Even when they've played 5A schools around them, like, longtime rival Everman. Everman's always been smaller. Even though Everman's in 5A, they always have guys that are a very senior-laden team. Again, and look, folks, you can make the jokes about, we all wax poetic about Texas high school football. Louisiana high school football, especially in the top 2 levels, is freaking fantastic. I mean, that's great football. For Ruston to win state, and especially so in Louisiana, a little backstory on how Louisiana works. District champs get into the playoffs. Everybody else, it's a ranking. It's a power poll. So who you play and all that. Now, Louisiana high school football has been dominated predominantly in the southern area of Louisiana, in the New Orleans area down there, outside of those, and then the Christian school in Monroe. I think it was Monroe Baptist. You had Evangel. Yeah, Evangel out of Shreveport, Monroe Wassman, Monroe Neville. They've always been really solid programs. Ruston, another one. But the problem is the power poll is very south heavy because that's where the predominant. So for a team in the north to even get through everything, it's a lot of politics. It's a lot of gerrymandering on who gets seated what to make sure you get these two teams playing in round 3, and Ruston to battled through that last year and win state pretty convincingly. I think they won like 31-7 over whoever they beat. They're a good team, folks. And if you're out there watching the game or if you're watching it online, you're going to be impressed with Ruston. I think sometimes us Texas fans, we get a little too full of ourselves on where we compare with other states. And Texas, of course, is one of the top, but so is Louisiana. Louisiana football is absolutely a blast to watch. And I mean, we're just going out there because it's Saturday afternoon. It's October. You start to feel like it's playoff football. It's kind of fun to see these.
Where's it going to be? Where are they playing?
Longview at Lobo Stadium.
Oh, they're playing in Longview? Okay.
Yeah, they're playing at Lobo Stadium. And again, Ruston's played at Longview. Longview and Ruston used to play before, and then they took some time off, and then they've kind of touched base every 5 or 6 years, and they'll do a home and home. But Ruston's already played in Longview. Not that matters, but, they at least know the trip, and they know what to expect on the stadium. They know where all the good parts and bad parts are of that stadium. But, yeah, I think this is a really interesting test for Stephenville right before district play begins.
That'll be a fun one to go watch. Is that going to be streamed, I wonder? I may have to pull that up.
I know Stephenville does a video broadcast, and in fact, if I remember, I will post it in the on the link on our YouTube on this channel or on this page or on this broadcast. Just look down, and I'll post the link. And I think Ruston does as well. So if you want to hear an interesting, the different version of the game, you can check out the Ruston side. Is that it?
Let's talk Axtell Valley Mills. I know Valley Mills is kind of down, but Axtell, their starting quarterback got hurt. Levi Leathers. Looks like they'll be lucky to get him back at the playoffs. But their backup, I think his name is AJ Fetch. Coach Horn really likes him. Said, hey, the only problem with this kid, he's just been behind. He's the same age as Levi Leathers. They've been in the same grade all year. He said the kid he's got a cannon for an arm. He's a better runner, and I think you saw that when he came in against Crawford. He took one to the house at 50-plus yards. And, of course, they've got playmakers in Kelby Hollingsworth and Tyson Michelle and the coach's son, Colden Horn. They should be fine. And Valley Mills just, they beat Axtell last year in the first round and gave them that 10-1 record that nobody really likes. They've got a really good running back in Jay-Sean Johnson. They call him Papa. He's a thick, stout kid. Really played really well last year. They don't post their stats and they don't send him to the trips. I don't really know what he's done this year. I know he's really good. They're kind of down. They lost, I believe, to Italy last week. That'll be a good game just because Axtell going back to Valley Mills, and trying to get some revenge. So I think Axtell wins that one probably pretty comfortably.
Well, the revenge part is, I think, is a valid thing. Also, it's the second playoff game. I mean, district game, and for Valley Mills, I mean, they're 0-1, and when you're in a district this big, you drop to 0-2. You're going to have to start pulling a win or two off that you weren't supposed to. But for Axtell, we'll focus on them. This is the perfect game to get a guy that's now taking over, to get him time, because the game matters. You can't just fluff it off because you don't want to be surprisingly 1-1 in a district that you're the prohibitive favorite. I mean, we could say maybe Italy, but let's be honest. If Axtell doesn't win this district and win it comfortably, we're all going to be confused. So you do have stakes. you have the revenge level, but you've got a team that you should beat comfortably. So it allows you to get your guy in and give him the full playbook. You don't have to be too conservative. Like if you're playing a really good team, you just didn't want him, you can just be, hey, dude, this is your team. You've got the team for the next 4 weeks. Let's go. And maybe you get in a situation where if he's playing well, does he Steve Berline, leathers? And what I'm talking about is in 91, Troy Aikman got hurt and Steve Berline started winning or kept winning. And by the time they got to the playoffs, Cowboys were like, you know what? You've got the hot hand. That's a good problem to have. So I think this is almost like one of those perfect situations where if you were going to lose a guy like Levi and you feel like you have a really good quarterback behind him, you can start that off this week. And I think they will. I think they'll win comfortably, mainly because that defense has just gotten better and better as they've played better and better teams, in my opinion. The last 2 weeks only giving up 13 total points to Dawson and to Crawford. I know both those programs are down, but they still have talent. So, yeah, I think Axtell wins. I think Axtell wins comfortably.
And shout out to Hamilton cracking the top 10 in 2A D1. I think they got a solid squad over there. And, Coach Horn, when I don't know if he said it in the – no, I think I talked to him. I did talk to him, but I think he was saying that, as far as seeing teams on film, Hamilton by far the best team he's seen. Like any of his opponents play, that they're pretty sharp over there. So they cracked the top 10. Now, let me ask you this. How close were y'all going to go watch Tatum and Texarkana Liberty Ilo?
Well,
come up on your radar, or did you kind of have this game circled early on?
Well, actually, so Saturday is just because it's Saturday. We had talked about Tatum and Liberty Ilo, but we're also thinking that, if the schedule goes like we think it will, Liberty Ilo versus Jefferson or Tatum versus Jefferson will probably be a better scope for what we want to see. Again, we go to see the best game. We don't care. We don't a lot of times stay till the very end. We're not there to see who wins. We're there to see who teams that we think are going to be going further in the playoffs. So in that respect, we're going down to Lexington Friday and they're playing Caldwell. No, Caldwell's not bad. I mean, good, but you go look at Caldwell's record and who they've lost to and how close those scores are. The Hornets aren't as bad as that. This isn't the Hornets that went, 2.5 seasons without getting a win a few years ago, but mainly we're there to see Lexington. And this was like the only time we could really fit in Lexington. We really want to see Case Evans, the quarterback, and we want to see that Eagle defense because me and Grant both think Lexington's going to be playing for a long, long time, as long as they stay healthy. But yeah, the Saturday game, man, that just fell in our lap, man. We pick any time to go see a Saturday game, especially if it's not September where you're sweating your what's off. We made that mistake a couple years ago. We went to Houston in September to watch, I can't remember who it was now. Somebody play somebody at 11 a.m. on a Saturday in September. And I think whoever decided to put that game in Houston at that time should be fired. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, we pick our games just by mainly we're road mapping who we think are going to be playing in the playoffs for a long time. And so, dude, we could pick for every one game we pick, there's 40 that we could have picked. It's tough. It really is tough to decide sometimes. Sometimes the schedule lays itself out for you where everybody plays at the perfect time where you get to see everybody and you get to see some great games. That's what's happened this year, man. We have seen some amazing classic games already, starting off with Carthage and Kilgore, going all the way out to Bushland to see them and Canadian in a good old-fashioned West Texas brawl, shooting down to Austin to see LBJ and Wimberley, and we were very impressed with Wimberley, but mainly LBJ. And then last week, Columbia and Belleville, and then seeing Springtown. I saw Springtown in China Spring 2 weeks ago, dude. That Springtown team's real. I mean, they are legitimate. That upset of Graham, I don't think it's necessarily an upset. And Graham has responded by playing really good since then. People don't realize Graham's only given up 20 points all year long. They have 3 shutouts. 37 points all year long, and 35 of it was in that Springtown game. So, yeah, man, picking of the games is sometimes the hardest part of what we do.
So you're in Lexington Friday night. Are y'all going to drive back? Are you going to spend the night and get in line at Snows and then head to Longview? Or what are y'all going to do?
If we were going to get in line at Snows, we wouldn't make it to Longview, unfortunately. Now we'll after I don't think we're going to be in Lexington all night. As solid as I think Caldwell is, I think Lexington's still going to take care of them. We'll drive. we always book before hotel in Rockdale, and then we'll just get up early Saturday and just take our time. Part of the fun for me and him, me and him are both very much like to be on the road driving Texas. So
Yeah.
we'll get up early enough to where, I think it's probably a 3.5, about 4.5 from Rockdale to Longview. We'll get up at 6 and drive around for 3.5 hours before we even head to Longview, figure out where we're going to eat and all that kind of fun stuff.
That sounds like fun. Hope safe travels.
Where are you going to be this week?
I don't know. I got volleyball. My daughter's volleyball on Saturday, or I might think about doing a road trip. But I may head over to Valley Mills and go watch Axtell Valley Mills. There's really not a whole lot around our area. You got down the road. I've got Italy at Rio Vista, March Hilton, Bosqueville at Dawson. But I think I may head over to Valley Mills. But I will. If I go to Valley Mills, I'll go by Hellberg. They're a great barbecue joint here in Central Texas. So I may get pregame there, and then it's about 15 minutes to Valley Mills from there. So
yeah, that's a good place to go. And Snow is one of the ones I haven't got to go to. We drove by there. We happened to be down in Columbus last weekend, and we were at Actington, and we went just by there to see, and it was 7:30 in the morning, and it was already just completely wrapped around and headed out. But Snow, that's a little unfair because they give out free alcohol. I think half the people there just for the alcohol. They're not even there for the barbecue. That's how you see Snow's actually got it smart. And I'm not saying women can't like barbecue, ladies, but for the most part, it's usually the guy talking to them. Hey, let's go stand in line. Snow figured it out for the ladies. Hey, if you stand in line, you're going to get great dino ribs and some great brisket, but we're also going to give you some really good free margaritas. So have fun doing that. So I think that's brilliant by Snow.
yeah, and we actually got Kerry. I talked to Kerry, the owner, and we got him kind of lined up to be on the podcast, the barbecue podcast. So I just got to send him an email and schedule a time. So that'll be a good one.
Yeah, and be looking forward to that. We're going to start putting those together. I think you and I talked about it a couple weeks ago on the show. We're going to start putting those together here pretty soon, and I'm really excited about that. And I know Grant is too. He's kind of become an amateur barbecue pit master, and he's gotten really, really good at it. And listening to or watching, but mainly listening to the first one that you sent me, it's the thing I love about barbecue people is other food genres, you can get real competitive and you can get real secretive. And with barbecue, at least here in Texas, and I think Franklin's has done a good job of kind of promoting this with their online how-tos and stuff. But people are willing to share their maybe not secrets, but their techniques and stuff. And all that does is make everybody better with barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they're all a close knit community. Like a bunch of those top 50 guys, and not even top 50 guys. They're all buddies. They all go. Sometimes they'll go to these Texas monthly festivals, the barbecue festivals. They hang out and they do different things. So, really, never heard any. I mean, I've talked to several of them. We've done 2 podcasts so far, and never heard a crossword one about it. I mean, they all just really get along and like each other.
The odd thing about Texas barbecue is the people that aren't kin all get along, but inside the families of barbecue people, it's a little different. That's where the fighting and the blacks and the 4 different restaurants, and they're all the same name, but they're not the same people. So yeah, that's the weird thing about Texas barbecue. All the outsiders get along, but all the family members, they tend to fight.
Yeah, because you've got blacks and then Hutchins. They kind of split off. There's 2 different Hutchins up in the Metroplex
Hutchins
now.
split off, and then there's 3 siblings, I think, and 2 were on one side and 1 on the other. But now one of the others has went back to the other side, and now I heard they've talked about reconciliation. It's just it's funny. It's funny where drama gets created in our world, and you'd never think simple barbecue food would, but it can, and it's always fun. I mean, it's fun for us who are on the outside looking in, but it's always fun to see all those so and so.
Yeah, I've been to
Be like the band Oasis or anything.
I've been to that Hutchins up in McKinney many a time, and I just thought it was great barbecue before it even came out as a top 50. So it was.
Yeah, we ate there last year. I'd eaten there before, but we ate there last year, and it was really, really good. Just I'm an East Texas guy. I mean, I love brisket, but I'm an East Texas guy. So for me, it's ribs, pulled pork, and sausage. And my God, they do all three of those so well.
Yeah, man, I love the. They got that baked potato bar. You just go load it up with whatever you want, and it's good stuff.
Baked potatoes that big before you even load them up, too.
Yeah.
All right, man. I think we have put week 6 into the bed. It's this week, and again, it's going to be kind of you got bye weeks next week, not as bad, but really, man, the football season has begun. Nothing against non-district, but it's time for the games that count. And to me, when you hit week 5 of the regular season, that's when, man, I'm ready for this. I've been waiting for this for a calendar.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and I really think about the District 12 and 2AD2 and District 5 and 3AD1. That's just going to be a really fun races to watch as the year goes on. Those two.
I thank everybody for joining us. What'd you say?
So those two just kind of really stick out to me.
No, I agree. I agree, and we can predict all we want, but there's always going to be a couple surprises here or there. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week. Again, if you have any questions, did you ever get an email set up or do you just give mine?
I got one. Let me find it right quick.
Okay, before he finds it, if you want to email me, you can email me, Terry at s2ssport.com, or you can email Kenny.
I don't know. I had it at one time, but I don't know where it's at.
I promise you next week.
That's my job for this week. Find our email address.
Kenny, it's like, where's Waldo? Where's the email? Again, we want to thank our title sponsor,
Send us a message on Twitter. That'll work. Send us a message on Twitter.
What's your Twitter handle?
Central Texas Football Podcast, CTFP Podcast.
All right, there you go. Or you can email me, Terry at s2ssport.com. You can also find him on Facebook, Central Texas Football Podcast. You can find Sideline to Sideline on Facebook. Just type in Sideline to Sideline. You can message us anywhere through there. Again, thanks to our title sponsor, Ranch Masters, Ranch and Home Realty out of Lake Whitney, Texas. Until next time, he's Kenny, I'm Terry, and this has been the Central Texas Football Podcast.